Hey everybody, welcome back. Today's video is going to be a little different. This is going to be a response video to another YouTube video that just recently came out. And we're going to give it a nice twist, I think. We're going to turn it into a little bit of a tech talk video. We're going to dive in and look at and talk about the internals of speakers. So, how did all this come about? Well, Andrew Robinson has a little review channel on YouTube and a lot of followers, and he does a very professional job on his site. Goes through and reviews, I guess, everything audio, and recently he did a video called What's Inside Your Speakers. So I'm guessing that he's had quite a few people asking when he does a speaker review, what's inside? Let's see the crossover, what's in there? And things like that. So he shot a video on it, covered a lot of stuff, and in a lot of it, or in a pretty good section of it, he went through quite a rant about crossover upgrading and things like that, or doing speaker upgrades and crossover parts, and was very opinionated on some of that stuff, and kind of wrapped all that up into one rant. And then finally I don't know if Christy is his wife or girlfriend. Maybe you guys can fill me in on that. But she's kind of the narrator behind the camera. And she asked him a question on that. I'm going to put my reading glass on. I made some notes on this one. I rarely ever make notes on anything, but I watched the video, so I made some notes on it. Christy finally asked, what is all this about? So let's roll a little clip and see what he had to say.
I mean, really, but what is this really about?
It's about a boutique industry where there are literal small companies whose entire business model is to convince you that there's something wrong with what you've bought, and that rather than buy right, buy once, buy a kit to fix it.
All right, if you're like me, in that little clip, it sounded a lot like he was talking about GR Research. And of course, I don't follow Andrew's channel, and so I don't know what he's doing over there. So obviously somebody sent me some messages and said, hey, check this out. Pretty sure Andrew's talking about you. And I look in this comment section, and there's quite a few people that are mentioning myself and GR Research. So I'm probably not the only one that's thinking, all right, he's talking about us, which I don't really care. You know, I get talked about on forums. There's guys that are our customers that are boasting about things. There's naysayers out there. There's always going to be those guys, and I just don't pay them any attention. But in this case, I thought, there's some real misconceptions here. There's an opportunity to go in and have a teachable moment, and I think that's what we're going to do here today. So, and I'm going to direct a lot of this video straight to Andrew. So, Andrew, it was your video that I'm responding to, and so a lot of this I'm responding right to you. And there was some misconceptions, and I hope I can help you with some of that and give you a little better understanding of what we do here at GR Research and the value of doing speaker upgrades. I know you weren't pro upgrade at all. You thought that not in your specific words, but it sounded ridiculous to go spend $300 on an upgrade to fix a speaker when the better money spent would just be to save that money and save up for a better speaker. So we're going to talk about some of that stuff too. But I'm going to go through and we're going to look at a few of your little sound clips there, or a few clips from your video I'm going to respond to, and then we're going to kind of dive in and we're going to try to learn some stuff. First of all, about GR Research, our business model is not centered around convincing people that there's something wrong with their speakers and we need to upgrade them, or we need to sell them an upgrade to fix their speakers because there's something wrong with their speakers. That's not what we do here at GR Research. Upgrades, and I mentioned this in a video not too long ago on our channel, upgrades comprise about 10% of our sales. The rest, the other 90% or so, is the selling of our own products. The upgrades are things that I've done for a long, long time, and it's more of a service to our customers. And we don't convince people to send us product, and we're not out there buying product or looking for product to do upgrades to. It's not what we do. Customers send us speakers that they want us to upgrade because they're not happy with them, or they just want more out of them, and they know that there's ways we can go in and tweak them or redesign them and get a lot more out of them. And a lot of times speakers come in and they are designed really well. And when they are, I say it in the video. This was well designed, but it was just built to a price point. Maybe it just had a bunch of real cheesy parts in there that's sucking the life out of the speaker, and we can go in and do some parts upgrades or something. But we're not just selling parts. Most of the time when speakers come in, there's serious engineering issues with those speakers. There's usually problems. So we have to go through and address those things. Rarely do we not see problems. We've seen some that were well designed from Monoprice. Golden Ear did a great job on their actual design work. The ELAC stuff was designed pretty well. ATC was done pretty well. The MoFi 10 that we took in not too long ago that was done by Andrew Jones, that was really well designed. Almost all the stuff Andrew Jones works on, really well designed, just built to a price point. So those are speakers that we just go in then and just do parts upgrades. But like I said, usually there's problems. Like the clip stuff, some of that stuff comes in, man, there's more than just cheap parts in the path. There's things that we're having to address, like drivers being out of phase. So the drivers are out of time with each other, and they're not arriving correctly in phase, and there's holes in the response from it. Or there's breakup or ringing in the drivers, and sometimes we have to push a woofer back out of that range, or use a steeper filter to get it out of it, or use a notch filter and try to notch down a peak that is a resonance and things like that. Or we're looking at an unbalanced impedance, and we're having to go in and balance the impedance load so the amp sees it as a nice even load. Almost all the time on budget level stuff that comes in, the cabinets are really lightly constructed and they buzz like crazy. So we've got products like no-res that we can offer the customer that address the ringing of the cabinet. Just simple stuff sometimes, getting poor quality parts out of the signal path, getting ferrous material out of the signal path, and stiffening up the cabinet. Sometimes we recommend adding braces, but the no-res will knock out the ringing. Just easy stuff that fixes a speaker. And so that's that little bit of what we do. And when customers send us a speaker, we measure and test it for free. So we're doing a free service. We evaluate it. We email them that information back and say, here's what it's doing. Here are your options. Here's what we recommend. What do you want us to do? And then we go from there. And then it could be, like I said, designing something that fixes those problems, or throwing some better parts into it. It could be an inexpensive little upgrade, or it can be a total redesign, and it can be a lot. But another thing is those upgrades are fun for the customer. It's like they get to take something and put a new crossover together and put it in their speakers and have a project that they enjoy and get the satisfaction of that they did it themselves, and the performance is fantastic. Sometimes it's a nice upgrade, sometimes it's a significant upgrade. And so those guys love doing those, especially my customers are mostly DIY guys. So, and that gets sometimes new people into the market. They try upgrades that they've never done before. They've never done an upgrade, and it kind of gets their feet wet. And then they come to us for some of our own products. And so it's kind of a side business there in a way. It's kind of a little side gig, but it promotes what we do very well, and people get to see what our capabilities are and what we do. And for some reason, people love upgrade videos. It's like they can't get enough upgrade videos. They want to know how a speaker performed and what can be done with it, and they just eat that stuff up. They don't want to just hear me talking about our products and something we're working on for us every week. They want to hear things that they learn from. So those upgrades are some of those things. They can really learn a lot about speaker design from watching those upgrades. And to be honest with you, we see hundreds of speakers all the time, and I see what's in everything that's out there. Almost every manufacturer of any of the budget line of products, we've seen it at one point or another. Sooner or later, we see it come in. And so I get to dissect almost every speaker from every company almost. And it's hard to say that we really learn anything from what we see. Every now and then there's a designer that stands out a little bit, that's doing things a little differently. Like Sandy Gross, he winds up putting components on positive and negative legs and things like that, that a lot of people don't think to try things like that. So it's refreshing to see someone thinking outside the box, but that's really rare, really, really rare. Usually everything that we see is very basically done. So that's kind of it in a nutshell of, why we offer those upgrades. And as you can see from the feedback, if it didn't make a difference, or if it was just a sideways movement, if it was just spending money on parts that they didn't need to spend money on, it wasn't going to matter, we wouldn't be in this business very long. Not in the days of the internet, not the way things work today. We'd be out of business in a hurry if it didn't confirm everything that we said it would. If those experiences weren't positive, we wouldn't be getting all these repeat customers. And if you look on Audio Circle in our forum, you look at the threads under the videos, and you look on our website at the feedback on all those upgrades and on our products, overwhelmingly it's positive. And we get emails all the time thanking us for what happened with the upgrade and how it sounds and how happy they are. I got 2 of them in today. So that's it in a nutshell. So let's move forward a little bit. Let's look at a couple of other key notes that I wrote down on here. Clearly, from what I could see in your video, people are interested in what's inside the speaker. In fact, let's play a little clip here of exactly that.
Yeah, I 100% agree.
Yeah.
I mean, I saw somebody in the comments wanting to know like what kind of crossover it has, or like wanted to see the crossover, and I'm like, come on,
Who cares?
come on, stop. Yeah, like
Who cares?
What are we talking about?
Who cares?
Now, I get it that you don't really care so much about what's going on in the speaker from your standpoint, but the educated customer does care, because they understand what these parts do and how they hurt the signal, and which companies are putting higher quality parts in there and which ones are not, and things like that. So let's play another little clip.
I don't care if the crossover is a buffalo nickel hot glued to a paper clip with 2 pieces of twine around it, all in a bazooka bubblegum wrapper.
I get it. I get it. I get where you're coming from. As a reviewer, you just want to review a product and talk about how great it is, and then have affiliate links there for the customer then, or the consumer, to click on your affiliate link and go buy that product that you just recommended, because you get a kickback on all of those products that are sold when they go on and buy it, but they bought it through your affiliate links. And if I look at this last video you did, what's inside your speaker, just scroll down and there's like 50 different affiliate links of all the speakers you're talking about and things that you've reviewed, because that's how you make your money. And you're not going to make money by recommending speaker upgrades, because there's no affiliate links for speaker upgrades. So I get it, but we approach things a little bit differently. I'm not doing this for the money. I'm not really money motivated. I am very competitive. I'm more driven to designing and building the best that there is at any price point, and I'm just constantly driven to make things better and to improve existing speakers for customers and send them something that they can enjoy. And I feel like that if we do right by people, then the sales are there, and the sales are there for us. The money comes, so I'm not worried about the money. So I don't do advertisements on our YouTube channel. although I get asked almost every day to do commercials. I wish that chair company would quit messaging me constantly. I'm not going to sell your office chairs for you. I don't do any of the ads on there, nothing to pay for to make money on the YouTube channel. I know there's monetization that is made, and I hate it that there's commercials that you guys have to sit through to watch the YouTube video, and I can't do anything about that. But so I understand where you're coming from. But let's examine what's really going on inside the speaker. I mean, that's what your customers, that's what your viewers are asking you, right? And to make an example, let's look at an example here. Let's look at the message you got from Cliff and what Christy had to say about the ELAC debut speaker. Let's roll that clip.
Cliff Forster says, I have not heard the debut 3.0,
Okay.
but the prior debut speakers measured well enough, but were to my ears boring.
Okay.
Didn't get the hype around them personally.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to say I totally understand where Cliff is coming from.
Mm-hmm.
I believe I felt the same way about the other ELAC speakers that I've heard, which has only, for the record, been 2.
Yeah.
In fact, I'm pretty sure I said the previous passive ELAC speaker was boring and too neutral for my taste.
Yep.
Well, as we can see from the clip, those guys thought that ELAC speaker was boring. Now, the speaker measured really well. Think about this, Andrew. The speaker measured really well. Why is it boring? What makes a speaker boring? What makes a speaker sound different? Is it, let's jack up the treble a little bit? Will that make it not boring? That's not what's being talked about here. When a speaker is boring, it really doesn't have anything to do with how accurate it is. All those measurements that you're learning to take now, and you're taking measurements of the speakers you're reviewing, those are measurements of accuracy, and they can be very useful. I mean, I use those tools in the design process, but that doesn't tell you how a speaker's going to sound. Now, here's where we're going to get into some good meat, so hold on here. Don't tune out on me. This is where the fun part is. I can design a speaker that has an accurate response, clean spectral decay, everything looks good. And it can sound boring. It can sound dull. It can sound lifeless. Or that same speaker can sound dynamic, fun, detailed, transparent, and layered within the soundstage. The whole soundstage can open up on these things. And huge differences. Why? How could that be if it measures the same? Well, the parts that are inside that speaker have a lot to do with it. All of the parts, everything in the signal path, from your amplifier all the way to the speaker and your speaker cables and everything, are all transferring the signal. Now, what makes it sound different is how much that signal is degraded from one end to the other. And a lot of it is degraded by cheesy parts in the signal path. And a lot of it is degraded by ferrous materials on the binding posts, the wiring, PVC jacketing on the wire, push-on connectors that are made of tin. I mean, there's a whole bunch of different things that can make it sound different. And the crossover parts themselves can make a huge difference in that regard. And often we'll set up a speaker with an external crossover, and we'll make changes to the crossover, or we'll make multiple crossovers and make comparisons using the same crossover where the parts are all the same and they measure exactly the same, but they sound completely different. And I've got some examples laid out on the table here for you. Our NX Studio monitor, one of the best sounding stand-mounted speakers money can buy. It has some of the best drivers, the configuration, it's well designed throughout. All 3 of these crossovers are a crossover for that speaker, and they all use the same value of parts. The only difference is the parts quality used and the wiring in this case. This one, this big monster over here, uses foil inductors. It uses a huge MyFlex copper foil cap on the tweeter, MyFlex bypass caps, sonic cap in the woofer circuit, a bypass cap on that's copper foil. That crossover on that speaker sounds amazing because it doesn't degrade the signal. It allows it to come through with all the spatial cues, all the details, everything is intact. And it sounds big, and it sounds deep, and it's layered, and there's space between things within the soundstage that when you listen to it, you think, oh my gosh, this is like being there, and that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to bring people from where they are to, higher levels. That's the whole point of the upgrades, everything. We're trying to move people up the line. And when you discourage that and you say, well, that's not going to matter, you're kind of holding them here. We don't want to hold people down at a budget level. We want them to move up the ladder a little bit. They enjoy this hobby and they strive to make it a little better all the time. That's part of the fun. This crossover, same crossover as the other one you just saw, foil inductors, a sonic cap in the woofer circuit, but it uses V caps on the tweeter circuit. It's a copper type capacitor, and it sounds different than the one with the MyFlex caps. This one also has dual-in resistors, where this one has path resistors. I don't like the path resistors. I do like the dual-in ones. I don't like the V caps. I do like the MyFlex caps. This one, by comparison, doesn't have as expansive a soundstage. It's not as airy. It's more closed in. The soundstage is a little less three-dimensional. The vocals in this one sound really good. It's kind of a smoother vocal, not quite as fast and detailed as this one, but it's good. But there's definitely differences between these two crossovers and how they sound. This one, on the other hand, this one was replicated using the cheapest parts we could get from Parts Express, like little electrolytic capacitors for the woofer circuit, iron core inductor, a little iodine cap, sandcast resistors, cheesy binding, post-cheesy wire. We dropped this one in there, and remember, it measures exactly the same. Dull as hell by comparison. Flat sounding, no depth to the soundstage. Sound sounds like it's just coming from the speakers itself. Kind of like what your wife or your girlfriend, Christy, we'll just say Christy, was mentioning when she talked about the ELAC speaker. Yeah, it just, same thing. And those parts matter. And I know you're telling people, hey, save up for the next, a better speaker. Well, the next better speaker can be the same way. Like the ELAC, for instance, again, dull speaker, cheap, cheesy parts inside of that thing. And those parts are just sucking the life out of that music. Let's say we don't want to upgrade that. We're going to save up our money and we're going to buy another Andrew Jones speaker, the MoFi 10. I just did an upgrade on the MoFi 10. So we measured and tested it. I said it was well designed, but the parts quality was fair. At best, they were fair. So let's say you saved up and you spent $3,000 on that thing, and you're in the same boat. It still didn't use really high quality parts. It still had ferrous material in the connectors. There was still a ton of stuff holding it back, and it needed an upgrade. Almost every speaker out there can be upgraded or improved in one way or another. And if the customer figures out ways to do that, that's not only part of the fun, but part of the enjoyment of making everything sound better. So let's look at some of the parts. Let's look at why do the parts make a difference? Like, let's look at two inductors. And I'm not going to go through all of this stuff because I've done videos on it. You can go see a video on why parts matter. And I go through a whole bunch of it in detail. We're just going to look at caps and coils. So these two coils are the same. This is a 4.7 millihenry inductor. This is what's called a laminated I-core, and it's one of the best types of cores because it's not a solid slug, but it's a laminated sheets of steel that run through it. This one has nothing in the middle. It's an air core. So let's think about the way a coil works. We've got a signal hitting one side and basically popping off the other. Remember, it's alternating current, so it's doing this. And as the current moves through this thing, it's creating a magnetic field, and this core tends to hold that field versus this has nothing in the middle of it, so there's no saturation, nothing to retain any residual charge. This holds a little bit of a residual charge, and it affects the way the signal transfers through it. So what does that affect? How does it sound? What's the audible difference, right? This tends to smear the signal because it's creating that smear by holding that signal with that charge that's on the core. So finer details are missing when they're going through an iron core versus an air core. Vocals are not as relaxed and open. They're more congested, like they're singing through a rag or something instead of being open and more transparent sounding. There's very big differences in the way they sound. So why not just use air core and everything, right? They sound a lot better. Everybody knows it. The whole industry accepts it. This is about 3 or 4 times more expensive to make than this one. It uses a lot more copper. It's a lot heavier. And when you get to a lot of those speakers, to save money, they put a laminated I-core on the woofer instead of an air core because that would cost a lot more money. Now, sometimes, like in this case, in the tweeter circuit, the value is small and it makes a bigger difference there. So they'll use a little air core inductor in the tweeter circuit because it doesn't cost that much more. But where it's going to be a lot more, they won't do it. They're skimping on everything when they build these speakers because they're trying to make them as cheap as possible to keep those margins up. Even the caps in this one, these aren't even polypropylene caps. They're just either mylar or polyester film or something like that. So capacitors, man, there's even a lot bigger difference in capacitors. Like this is a 100 microfarad electrolytic cap. This is a 100 microfarad JB poly cap. Notice the poly cap's a lot bigger in size and it's a lot more expensive to make. Now, capacitors are what we think of as an energy storage device. It holds a charge. That's why we see great big capacitors on power supplies and stuff in electronics. It's holding a charge there so that when it's needed, it can discharge it more power on demand and make it more dynamic sounding. Well, that's great for the electronic side, but on the speaker end of it, holding a residual charge is what we don't want because that causes smearing. So think of it as the signal goes to the cap and it's held there and then it's discharged. Versus a poly cap, it enters the cap, it's held there and then it's discharged. And some poly caps are much faster than others and they have a much cleaner sound. Like this big Sonic cap, same value as this JB cap, but because of the way it's made and the materials that are used, it's even cleaner and faster. So that signal comes in and it goes right out and it doesn't hold it as much. And you hear things that you wouldn't hear in a typical cap. And in caps like this is a lot of smearing. So let's take the sound of a piano. That piano note, you hear them strike that note and there's a peak as you hear the attack, and then you hear the decay structure of that piano as that note and the harmonics of it decay over time. That's what you hear when there's nothing in the signal to degrade that, or you're using a real high quality cap. Something like this big MyFlex over here has no effect on degrading the signal at all compared to some of these other caps. So you hear all of that decay. Now, if it's a electrolytic cap or even some of these cheap caps like on this thing, what happens is that peak is rounded off. So you miss some of the dynamics of it, and then the decay structure of it is smeared. So you just hear it's like you can hear the tone of it, but you don't hear all the decay and all the disdain there. The other thing that happens from those capacitors is it eats up what I call spatial cues. That's what makes the whole sound stage sound big and open and transparent. When you eat up those spatial cues, then everything's boxed in. Everything draws to the speaker and it's two-dimensional. You may get a center image, but it's flat sounding. And with some of these higher quality parts, it's just the complete opposite. You hear actual space between things within the soundstage. You hear differences between where the singers are, where they were mixed in the soundstage, and the instruments, and how big they are, even higher up in the soundstage or down low in the soundstage. It's incredible how much difference it can make, and it's easy to demonstrate. We can just hook up this crossover versus one of these, and you go from holy crap, that sounds good, to man, that sounds awful. It's a big deal sometimes, and in a lot of these upgrades we do, it's a big deal, and we spend tons of time comparing these parts to find out the differences in how they sound. Like right over here on the table, all of these parts are all capacitors that are a zero point 0.1 microfarad. Got a little JB cap, got a little Gen 2 sonic cap, a couple of different types of Gen 3 sonic caps, and then here's a couple of Doolin caps. This one is a silver foil, this one's a copper foil. With these, what we do is we just drop them in on the circuit. We'll just tag them onto the capacitors on the tweeter. And the smaller cap will help discharge the stored energy in the bigger cap and make it sound faster and cleaner. It also tends to take on the sound of the bypass cap, and it also helps be more expansive in the sound stage and preserving some of the spatial cues. And they all sound different. Now in our system, it's easy for us to hear these differences because we've looked at everything in the signal path and try to maximize everything to not degrade the signal. And then the speakers are well out into the room. And then the room is really well treated. And there's diffusers, there's thick foam pads and panels that absorb low frequency. There's a big diffuser in the middle of the room to kind of break up any reflections. So the room is tweaked and tuned in such a way that we can hear everything. And we can swap out a cable, any cable, speaker cable, power cable, interconnect, digital cable. We hear those differences immediately because we've taken away all those things that would get in the way, and especially the room. The room is as important a factor as anything else in the system. And often customers send us photos of their room because we say, they're trying to explain what they've got. And I say, send me a picture. And so we can see where they are. And sometimes they have a very untreated room and they're starting from down here. And so we're helping them get, first of all, some better speakers, but we're also encouraging them to get them out away from the walls and treat the room and do things like that because we're helping people move up the ladder. And if the room is a completely empty room, flat walls, nothing behind the speaker, maybe a giant TV right in the middle of the two speakers with a big reflective surface on it. There's windows down the side of the room that are untreated, no curtains on them, untreated ceiling, tile floor, maybe just a throw rug on the floor or something. I mean, that's a nightmare. That's horrible. You can't hear any of this stuff. And the reason I'm going this direction with this is because when you have a room set up like that, you're not going to hear what all of this stuff brings to the table. You may hear differences in clarity and detail for sure, but all of this stuff going on in the soundstage is going to be overwhelmed by the reflections that are going on in the room. You've got room reverberation and delayed reflections and things like that, and it will completely disrupt the soundstage. And especially if the speakers are close to the front wall and the wall's untreated, it will sound as if it's playing from that wall forward. So all your soundstage layering and things like that are all going to be smooshed into a mush that you're not going to get it. So for us here at GR Research, we have to have well set up, dedicated listening rooms because we're listening for this stuff. This is the stuff that makes our product better. This is how we can do upgrades to other companies' speakers and know what those differences are going to be when we say, okay, we're going to replace some of these caps with some of these caps, and we know what's going to happen because we've listened to those things and we know. So the room is like the most important tool for anybody in the audio industry. Like, for instance, we had some DACs in here. We're A-B and some different DA converters. And we had two DACs that sounded very similar. Like, those are pretty close. But one of them, the vocal was deeper within the soundstage, and the other, the vocal was more pushed up forward. And there was a lot of smaller details like that that were different, that were only soundstage related. And if you don't have a room set up to where you can recreate that, then you're not going to hear it. So we're often very reserved on sending out products to YouTube reviewers that really don't have the tools necessary to review our products. And it's just like anything else. If we were building supercars, we wouldn't send it to a reviewer that's just going to drive the car around the block and talk about how well it rode. We'd want that supercar out on the track. We want it run through the paces. We want the reviewers to say, this is how that supercar performed. It's the same with our products. It's the same with any high-end audio products. Now, I will say, it's a completely different situation with our customers. Our customers can enjoy our speakers in a variety of applications. They can be on a desktop. They can be speakers that they've set up out in their garage. They can be speakers that are in their room that doubles with home theater and music and their family, and it has a TV, and there's a whole lot of situations there that may not be perfect at all, but our speakers can still be enjoyed by the customer. Now, a reviewer, I look at completely different. I look at a reviewer just like I look at us. I expect more out of a reviewer. I expect a reviewer to have a treated, dedicated room that's going to allow them to hear everything that's going on and be able to report back, hey, this is exactly how this speaker differs from this other speaker. This one has, for instance, a really good tonality, but this one images far better. You wouldn't know that if you didn't have the tools to hear that. And I think that's one of the most important things. And I can understand why somebody might think that a lot of these high quality parts and things that we do wouldn't make that much difference. If you have a room that won't allow you to recreate it, then that may be your reality. But you can't then say all of this stuff doesn't matter. Like, that won't make any difference. It's just a waste of money. You can't say that. All you can say is it didn't do anything for you, or it may not have helped you. And I say that in regarding to any kind of upgrade, whether it's cables or whatever. The speaker stuff, like I said, almost always you can tell differences in clarity and detail. That's apparent. But the whole soundstage thing and everything involved in imaging, you're just not going to get unless you have the tools. And so the reason I kind of went there with that too, I went towards room treatment and everything, because all of this is a complete system, and everybody needs to kind of think of it that way. And Andrew, I want to invite you, and I've invited reviewers to come before. I want to invite you to come. I want to invite you to come to GR Research. You can bring Christy with you. You guys can hear audio systems like you've never heard before. You can hear layering within a sound stage and things that are probably beyond what you would normally hear by a lot. You'll be able to hear differences in the things that I've talked about: cables, interconnect, power cables, speaker cables, digital cables, all that. I can swap out any of that and you can hear a difference just like that. And I guarantee you, because everybody that's ever come it's always been the same. It's been completely unanimous. It's easy to hear. But if you don't have the tools, if you don't have a room set up very well, and you don't have speakers that can resolve those things, then you're not going to hear them. So if you came, you'd get to hear some stuff. We would listen to a lot of music. We'd have a lot of fun. And my hope is a friendship, which I always develop friendship with everybody that comes. I'm a great host. We'll go out and eat some barbecue and have a good time. But I would love for you to take away a little bit of what you heard here and think, how can I take that then and become a better reviewer? Maybe I can apply some of that to my room and get those speakers out into the wall and become a better reviewer. Because more than anything, and this is a big point in all of this, more than anything, I want you and all the other YouTube reviewers out there to be the best reviewers you can be. I don't care if you're making money on affiliate links. Just say, I'm making money on affiliate links, and if you want to keep my show going, use our affiliate links because it helps me. Nothing wrong with that. That's your stick. Great. Be upfront with people and tell them that that's what's going on. But I want you to be a better reviewer, and the same with all you YouTube reviewers, because the young generation need you guys really badly. The younger people out there, they're not going to go to the newsstand and buy Stereophile or the Absolute Sound. In fact, they don't read magazines at all anymore. The whole magazine thing it's almost gone. They want it on their phone, on their computer, instant information, and they want to watch a YouTube video and have you say, this is how this speaker sounds. This is what I got out of it. This is how well it did in these areas, and it would work well for you or with this gear or in a certain room, and give really good recommendations. And I think when you do that, then there are companies that will rise to the top, and there's some that maybe won't. And I think that's good for the industry too. And reviewers like that are the reviewers that I'll send product out to, not the reviewers that they're reviewing a speaker in their bedroom. Their waterbed's over here, and they've just got a couple of speakers set up and on a bare wall. I can't send gear to those guys. They're not going to get what we've done. They're not going to be able to reproduce everything that we've worked hard for. And I want all the reviewers, whether they like our product or not, I don't care. They don't have to say, it's my favorite, blah, 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 whatever. I want them to be able to say, this is how it sounded. And not just with our stuff, but with all of the stuff. Because we've got to educate now a whole new generation of young people and give them good feedback. So that's a little bit of a challenge to you, I know, and you may turn your nose up at it. But you know what? The offer's there and it's genuine. You can come and let's have fun and let's listen to music and let's learn stuff. And maybe we can learn stuff about each other. Who knows? And that same offer's out there still for the rest of you YouTube reviewers out there that want to come and have some fun and see what higher levels of audio are really about. You can see what I'm about. See what GR Research is about. What we're striving for. See if all of this is a bunch of BS or if it's the real deal. I'm good with that. I'm challenging you. Come find out if it's the real deal or if it's BS. And it'll be fun. All right. I guess I'm through ranting now. Everybody can have a little rant every now and then, I guess, right? That's it for this video, and see you guys in the next one. Hope you liked it.